Clyde, I wasn't here last week. Shout out to friend of the show and apparently much more popular than I am on TikTok, Carrie. It's fine. I'm not bitter. When I was looking at my notes and getting started for this week, I found in my notes from episode 8, there was a discussion on the island of what's the biggest animal you could face in a fight. Now, since that episode, discourse online has spiked in one specific direction, which is who would win in a fight? 100 gorillas. Wait, no. 100 men versus one gorilla. So, my question for you, because this is what we do here on Survivor Analytics, we discuss the hard questions. Can 100 men take on one gorilla?
So this is assuming it's a hands-on fight. The 100 men can't create any weapons.
I mean, that's the question, right? If, say, everybody spawns into a Hunger Games style arena where there are natural materials around. No weapons, natural materials. 100 men, you could send 20 to go start making weapons.
Yeah, I think if it's in a Hunger Games style arena, then the humans win. If you put them in a boxing ring in Staples Center, then the gorilla wins. So the environment has a big impact on it. And I think if you go back and watch that clip from episode 8, Joe talks about fighting a gorilla. I'm pretty sure
he does.
He talks about how he would beat a gorilla if it was an old gorilla or one that was on its way out already. So he was a step ahead of the trends.
I mean, for all we know, that's where the trend came from.
Oh, he's the start of it? The trendsetter of the season?
It could be. We don't know. Welcome to Survivor Analytics. Today we're talking episode 10 of Survivor 48. I'm the voice of the people. My name's Jack. With me, as always, the true expert. Say hi, Clyde, and tell us how you felt after this episode.
What's up, party people? We're back. We're continuing to crawl our way through the post-merge. How I felt after this episode. The season is kind of dragging for me. I feel like we have this one majority alliance that's running the entire show. And this week we saw a contestant have an opportunity to flip the game in their favor, and they passed it up. And now looking deeper into the season, I just feel that the core of this alliance, that Kyle, Shaheen, Joe, and Eva are going to run the rest of the way. And who knows, maybe I'll be wrong. There are some things in the game that can disrupt that power structure. But I'm feeling more and more pessimistic as we get deeper into the season. How are you feeling about it right now?
You know, I love me a meat boy. I love Joe. I love Eva. I love Kyle. I love Camilla. I like Shaheen a lot. He's not been high on my list, but that's just because the others are higher. I do kind of wish we had a little more drama to look forward to. It's hard to see this train slowing down. I think that the question is going to be Kyle and Camilla, because Joe and Eva and Shaheen aren't going to change a thing. If they make it to Final Four, they're happy. That's the game they want to play. So, I don't know. This episode was a little underwhelming. Challenges weren't great. Yeah, we got a couple things to discuss here. So, should we just jump in? Should we just start knocking things out here?
Yeah. At the beginning of the episode, the first thing that I've written down is the Mary jury vote. Players are starting to think long-term this season. They want to make sure that they have advocates on the jury. And Eva is putting her social skills to work right after Tribal Council. David was just booted. Mary was blindsided. And Eva sits down with Mary and says, hey, I'm going to be honest with you. You're not in the core of the alliance. You're not at the center of the power structure. I'm not going deep in the game with you, but I'm going to try my best to keep you around as long as possible. Mary seems to appreciate this honesty. And she says, oh, would you consider playing your idol on me? And Eva says, no, I'm not going to play my idol on you.
But I'll try and protect you.
It's a really weird dynamic because you can compare this conversation to the one between Mary and Joe later in the episode. Because Joe has a similar level of honesty with Mary, but it doesn't resonate to the same extent. Since this core group of 4 is looking like they're going to dominate the rest of the game, I'm starting to think about potential final tribal council combinations. And I think the one thing going for this season is that I don't know who wins from that core 4. I don't know who has the best reputation with the jury out of Joe, Shaheen, Eva, and Kyle. So I'm trying to pick up on little moments like this where I'm getting the sense that Mary would be more likely to vote for someone like Eva than someone like Joe. But how did you feel about the jury management on display this week?
It's very blatant from a couple people, right? Joe is way too direct with it. Way too direct, which I think actually does hurt him. He goes to Mary and is basically like, yeah, I just want to be on good terms with everyone. You never know when you're going home. There's a smugness to it that I don't think he intends, but still comes across. And Mary, in her precarious position, is understandably kind of jaded by it. Yeah, the jury management piece, there's a great episode of Game Changer, the show on Dropout, which is frankly a better show than this one.
Whoa,
Uh,
okay. A little
you
bit
know,
harsh. I disagree, but
it's more creative for sure. Great game show. Highly recommend. Doesn't merit analytics because of its nature, or we'd be covering that. Anyway, there's an episode where the players decide to unionize against the host, and that's how they win, right? They basically are told by the show that they have to undercut one another and eventually band together against the host. And that's the secret to winning the game. This season of Survivor, this little group kind of feels like that, where they've unlocked an alternate ending of Survivor that is not as interesting, but is nicer. This core four, even the core six, right? You add Mitch and Camilla into that roster. There is so much straightforwardness, right? There's such a priority and a premium placed on being direct, being nice, that it makes the jury management essential. It feels like any of them are going to end up at the end without very many compelling moves, and it's going to come down to likability and speeches at the end and who you've talked to more on the jury, which is a very different game of Survivor than what we've covered and is a lot more boring in a way.
yeah, it's difficult. It doesn't make for a better TV product, but from the players' perspectives, like, I get it. Their goal when they go on the island is to not make the best television, it's to win the game. And I think
Yeah.
if you have a stable 4-person alliance that's built on these principles of honor and integrity, the fact that Survivor now includes a forced fire making challenge, the structure of the game allows that 4 to dominate the post merge and never technically turn on each other.
Yes.
Because they'll never
Yes.
have to do a traditional vote at the final 4. Whoever wins immunity will need to be the one that cuts someone's throat. So someone like Joe or Eva could technically go through the entire game without having a deceptive play style.
Right.
On the topic of Joe, he's my winner pick for the season, and I do think he's playing a great strategic game. We can have an argument over who has the most agency in this Strong Six alliance, but I see Joe as the glue of that group. He's the one tight with Eva. He's the one tight with Shaheen, and now even Kyle doesn't want to flip against him.
Yeah.
So I feel like Joe is probably playing the best strategic game on the island, but you'll have players like Joe dominate the game strategically, direct the vote, and then still lose in the end because people are so bitter towards them. And I don't think Joe is helping his case by beating that drum of honor and integrity. I'm scared he's going to go to the end of the game with the best strategic resume and still lose because people are just pissed off at him in general. So,
Yeah. I mean, you look at who's left or who's headed to the jury. I mean, Star, Mary, almost definitely, Mitch, probably. You look at those 3, that's some bitterness. It's hard to be told, oh yeah, you lost because we didn't decide you were part of the group that was going to be honorable. We didn't want you to be in our club. We didn't pick you for our dodgeball team, and that's why we want you to give us $1 million. I almost wonder if that makes the best pitch at the end to be surrounded by your core 4, right? You want to be sitting there next to Eva and Shaheen or Eva and Kyle if you're Joe, because that way you can say, look, we all did the same thing. We all work together. You have to pick one of us. Here's why you should pick me. You can't be bitter because the bitterness is distributed equally.
I feel like that bitterness might not be as even as we may think, because someone like Kyle is a little bit more upfront in that I'm here to play the game. He's not proclaiming himself to be this honorable player like Joe and Eva. So we'll need to see how it all plays out, but I am getting a little bit nervous with Joe's jury prospects. I still think he beats Eva in a jury vote, but I'm getting more and more cautious when it's Joe versus Kyle or Joe versus Shaheen. Like Shaheen
Yeah.
especially is presented as the social butterfly of this cast. Next thing that I want to talk about is the Revolution. As it stands right now, there's a majority alliance of 6. You got Eva, Joe, Shaheen, Kyle, and then Camilla and Mitch on the periphery of that group. Your bottom feeders are Star and Mary. So Camilla and Mitch should know that they're on the outside of their main alliance. Camilla knows it for sure. She says it in confessional and she's walking around camp telling other people. And it feels like, okay, there's some momentum building for a big flip this episode. And my initial thought is, okay, Kyle and Camilla for this entire season have been hyping up this storyline of we're this undercover duo. No one's going to see us coming until the moment where we change the entire game. And I'm thinking, this is that moment. This is the time where Kyle flips on the core alliance and he never really seriously considers it. We get in the early section of this episode, Camilla approaches him and says, maybe we can turn on Joe. And Kyle isn't down. How did you feel about Kyle's decision-making this week, kind of balancing his loyalty between Joe's alliance and his relationship with Camilla?
If Camilla had said we should flip on Shaheen, he would have done it.
Really? You think
I
so?
think so, because what he makes very clear in his confessional is he never wants to go against Camilla, but he and Joe are personally so close that he doesn't want to go against Joe either. Camilla is like family and Joe has become a dear friend to him, is basically what he says. Shaheen's not in the same echelon. So we see a couple of moments in this episode where one person proposes a vote to another without realizing the gravity of that person's relationship with the proposed target. Mary does this later to Camilla. Mary says, let's go for Kyle. If Mary had said somebody else, right, it could have worked. And so both with Camilla here and Mary later on, it's just a moment of trying to take initiative without enough intel about the target you want to go after and the person you want to work with. That's my take, is if Kyle was offered another opportunity, he would have taken it. I think Kyle would have been willing to say, I'm going to take Shaheen out and I'm going to force Joe and Eva to do a core 4 with me, Camilla, and each other.
I think that would have been a great move. But I don't know, like he doesn't want to fully commit to that relationship with Camilla. And by the end of the episode, when Star goes home, I don't know if he'll have another opportunity to flip the game with Camilla, just the way the numbers are shaking out down the line. Do you think from Kyle's perspective, when he told Camilla, no, I'm not flipping on the alliance, is that him saying, I'm not flipping on them now, or I'm not flipping on them ever? Because I'm getting the sense that this is more of a final decision for the season than a temporary one.
I think the circumstances might evolve, but I don't think he'll ever turn on Joe. I think he would try to convince Joe and Eva to turn on Shaheen. Here's the only storyline I see happening that doesn't result in a core 4 at the end. The only one I see, barring some weird immunity that somehow Mary wins or Mitch wins, right? The only permutation I see is the storyline that has been building all season of Shaheen is a brilliant strategist, comes to bite him in the butt, and everyone else goes, we have to go after him. He's too big of a target. That's the only narrative I can see that ends with something different happening for the season. And there is the groundwork there, right? I don't know if it'll happen, but yeah, I think Kyle could turn on Shaheen eventually. I don't think it's definite, he's not going to change for the rest of the season.
I hope he's willing to flip on Shaheen on some point. I think that would make a way more interesting trajectory for the season. And if he doesn't, and that group steamrolls, Shaheen will have a legitimate chance at winning the whole thing. Because if they knock out Mary next week, then Mitch the following one, by the time you get to the final 5, Shaheen's in the power seat because you have Joe and Eva, Kyle and Camilla, and right in the middle, you have Shaheen basically directing the rest of the season. So he could either get flipped on or be in the most powerful position in the whole game. Speaking of the Revolution, Kyle should get some heat for not flipping this week, but the person who will get the most criticism after this episode is Mitch.
Yes.
Star approaches Mitch with the offer to join the Revolution and force a rock draw at the next tribal council. And Mitch turns her down. He says that Star's offer is the biggest joke on the island.
Star has, through her lack of seriousness or perceived lack of seriousness throughout the season, preemptively burned bridges. I don't want to blame this on Star because I do think it's a bad read by Mitch, but it's like Star hasn't wanted to play for a long time. Early on, she was really blatant with her idol hunting, then she gave away her idol. Remember that? And then since then, every time there's anything strategic, she's just kind of hanging out, lounging. She is not prioritizing strategic involvement. All of that adds up to a situation where Mitch doesn't have a reason to trust her. He doesn't have a great reason to distrust her other than the fact that she wrote his name down, which is, to be fair, a decent reason. I mean, Mitch doesn't make a great read here, and someone else should have approached him, but both Mary and Star have essentially burned their paths forward through their past action or inaction. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to hate on Mitch too much, but it is a bad move.
See, I think it's a bad move because we don't know what Mitch is thinking long term. Let's say everything goes according to plan. Mitch gets to the final 6 with that core group. How does he envision himself reaching the final tribal from there? I don't know. And I think if the edit at least showed us and gave us scenes of Shaheen connecting with Mitch, we at least have a better understanding of his perspective. We know how he anticipates reaching the final tribal. But as it stands now, it feels like he's just competing for 5th or 6th place, and he's just hoping that he can win all the immunity challenges in that last stretch of the game. So there's a lot of missing information with Mitch. At the same time, I kind of get it. Like if I was in his shoes, I would have a very difficult time flipping to a group that just wrote my name down. And in that flip, he's not even guaranteed that they get their way. They're asking him to make the flip and enter a rock draw and go into a 1 out of, I think, 5 chance of going home. So it's a very difficult ask as is, especially when you just voted against him. So I think the real mistake from those bottom feeders was voting against Mitch in the David boot. Had they not turned on him there, he probably would have been more receptive to this plan.
Another facet is we do get an animal shot here of a lot of bats kind of snoring, yawning, kind of yelping at each other. And then we see that Mitch passes out fast and snores a lot. And it drives Star nuts. And Star asks him to wait until other people fall asleep so that his snoring isn't so bad. So we see that moment of like inter-camp conflict right before all of this. Yeah, it doesn't help. A little bit of butting heads, but the bats are pretty cool. All right, challenge?
Yeah, let's do the reward challenge.
All right. I mean, this one's pretty mediocre. It's a reward. They go to a different island that they've never been to before to sit in the same place that we see from Sanctuary, basically, but slightly different, to eat chicken and waffles. The challenge is your feet are tied together, your arms are tied at your side, you have to crawl, and then after the crawl, throw 3 rings onto a pitchfork. Jeff makes the contestants chant chicken and waffles.
Yeah, it felt a bit forced.
Yeah, I watched this on 2x speed, and it felt too long in 2x speed. So that's how you know it's kind of an awkward thing.
I was just going to say, I wrote down, you knew this episode was like stagnant and boring strategically when production needed to include 2 original songs to fill up the airtime. We had this one, and then we had Star's rap leading up to Tribal Council.
Yeah, the 2 original songs, and we get from Joe in the next challenge, a very, very, very drawn out slow motion of him taking 1 step. And so there's a lot of filler. Kyle ends up winning. 3 people on the reward that he gets to take with him. Half of the people in the tribe. My question for you, Clyde, is if you are Kyle, who do you take on this reward?
So I actually like Kyle's thought process here. He picks Eva, Camilla, and Shaheen. And his selections aren't as important as the people that he's leaving behind. He's leaving behind that group of Mitch, Star, Mary, and Joe. And his hope is that those players all get pissed off to the point where Mitch is willing to flip at the next tribal council, which is weird that Kyle is trying to incentivize the bottom feeders to turn the game around, but he himself doesn't want to make that flip happen.
Yeah.
I like what Kyle was thinking here. I think it was a really interesting decision, especially leaving Joe with the bottom feeders in hopes that he can just piss them off even more. But I just don't think it's as impactful if you yourself don't plan on flipping either.
I think he's really playing both sides and waiting to see what comes out on top. If the bottom feeders can get some momentum going and some confidence, then he can switch and say, oh, I orchestrated this. But if, like it does, it fizzles out, he is not tethered to that strategic move. So I think there is something to that. He's planting seeds and seeing what grows. Eva, Camilla, and Shaheen is an interesting group. Eva really feels like a safe move here because you can, if you're Kyle and you want someone to stay behind to babysit, Eva's too nice. You need to have either Joe or Shaheen stay behind. You need one of the grown-ups, for lack of a better word, one of the dudes who is willing to be a little more direct. Because we saw Eva with Mary earlier, right? She'll say, oh yeah, I'll protect you. I won't play my idol, but I'll be nice to you. So Eva feels very straightforward, taking Camilla. That's him saying we can't be super open with our relationship, but we are still tight. And then do you have any thoughts on Joe versus Shaheen? Because Joe takes it very personal and tries to like justify it internally and say, I know this is because someone had to stay behind. Why do you think it was Joe versus Shaheen?
I kind of like taking Shaheen over Joe. I feel like Kyle is starting to think more long term. And if we end up with that final five situation I mentioned earlier where Shaheen is in the middle, then you want to build up that rapport with him now so that way he ultimately picks your side. I think it might be more of a long term play, building up that alliance with Shaheen because you know you're not going to break up Joe and Eva. Your best hope is to pull away their third member. So I like the move from Kyle. Not a lot of highlights for me at the reward itself. The only thing I wrote down is that Shaheen takes a moment to put some whipped cream in his hand and just toss it at Eva. And she
Just
loves that.
Fully chucks it at her. It's pretty great. Have you ever thrown whipped cream like that? It's very satisfying.
You have? I've never done this before.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Whipped cream and shaving cream both sort of fly like that. And it's something about, it's a liquid, right? It's a foam. But when you have enough, it does kind of develop a center of gravity and it becomes throwable. It's weird.
Yeah, try it at home. Your DIY survivor project.
Tag us on TikTok at Survivor Analytics. The hashtag Survivor Analytics foam throwing challenge. Throw your whipped cream at your favorite hockey player.
Yeah, your favorite hockey player, your best friend, or your biggest enemy. And let us know what role they fulfill for you. That small moment of Shaheen throwing the whipped cream at Eva, it does hype up that aspect of Shaheen's edit where everybody loves him. I feel like he'll have a great chance at winning a jury vote if he sits in the end. He won't get Eva's vote because Eva would vote for Joe if either of them are there. But I don't know if there's a single person in the game that dislikes Shaheen. Like, I don't think there's any jury votes that I would say they're absolutely not going to him due to his poor social play. And I feel like you could say that about some of the other contestants here.
Yeah.
You want to go the immunity challenge then? I don't have much else between the two.
Yeah. I don't have much either. This challenge is on paper pretty interesting. The challenge itself, balancing a platform by a rope attached to the platform. The players have to walk back and forth about, what would you say, 20 feet?
Yeah, about that.
About 20 feet from the puzzle pieces that are like little blocks like you'd have for a child with letters on them. And you have to spell immunity on the platform. So as the tower gets taller and you're walking back and forth, balancing it becomes very, very challenging. On paper, that sounds really interesting. It's not. Jeff does make an offer. He says, hey guys, 3 of you sit out. You get rice for the rest of the season, for the last week of the show. Nobody offers to sit out. Makes sense. And Jeff is like, why don't you guys want to sit down and have rice? I don't think Jeff understands who he's talking to, because he's talking to a group of either incredible competitors who love the grind or people who are desperate to stay in the game. There's nobody in this challenge who doesn't want to do it for one reason or another, right? And Jeff's like, come on, guys, surely somebody will give up their spot. It's rice. I don't think he's thinking through what he's actually saying, which is kind of a shame.
Yeah, I don't think this is a necessary part of a new era season anymore. It was fun
No.
when they first started doing it. I think they started the Rice negotiation back in Survivor David versus Goliath, but it doesn't need to be a standardized part of the show anymore.
No.
I think if
No.
contestants want to make an offer for Rice, they can do it without Jeff bringing it up first. And then it kind of leads to some more interesting gameplay, gives you a sense of how much the cast is struggling with the physical conditions on the island. In case you were wondering, the name of this challenge is A Bit Tipsy. We last saw it on Survivor 47, and this challenge was won by
I don't look at me.
Rachel. It was won by Rachel, one of her 4 individual immunity wins that season.
I do not remember seeing this challenge.
It might have been an episode that you missed or something, but I will say this challenge will always reveal who watches Survivor and who doesn't, because if you watch Survivor, then you know off the bat what you should do in this challenge is take all the blocks and stack them on your initial platform in the right order. If you do that, then you don't need to worry about the spelling when you go back and forth. You don't need to be holding the rope and searching for the right block at the same time. Just organize them out of the gate and work from there. I think there was 1 or 2 people that did it.
I wrote this down. Mitch is the only person I noticed who did that, stacking them in the reverse order so that you can spell out the word without having to look. Very clever. We see a lot of people fail very quickly to the point where we don't see them again in the challenge. We see Star fail quite a bit. We don't see Eva at all. It was hard to enjoy this. I wrote down, really hard to make this compelling TV, even on 2x speed. I like the premise of this challenge a lot, but the way it was edited and the pacing of it was just really hard to enjoy. I feel like there's a version of this challenge that is good TV. This wasn't it.
I think it was more so the editing. I think this challenge can be entertaining, but why are we including slow motion shots for this one? The slow-mo shots should be reserved for those challenges that are fast-paced. The contestants are swimming through the water in a race of some kind.
Yeah.
But this is already a challenge that's based in patience and being careful while holding that rope. You don't need to add the slow-motion element, even if you get 3 different flies moving around Joe's face. But speaking of Joe, he won the challenge. His 3rd individual immunity win of the season. He's getting closer and closer to that Survivor record of 5 individual immunity wins, a record that is held by
Rachel.
Ozzy.
Oh!
Which we saw on Cook Islands. Ozzy won 5 out of 6 there. So that's the most immunity wins in a single season and the best individual win rate. So Joe is chasing history right now.
Joe is kind of cementing himself as one of my favorite players. Between his compassion and good social game, his good strategic game, and the physical, I mean, he's the total package.
I don't think he's one of the most entertaining players. I think he has a very old school approach to the game. But if he pulls this off and he wins this season by just having a complete stranglehold on the strategic direction in the post-merge, it will be one of the best wins that we've covered on this podcast. I don't think it'll be better than someone like Todd from China, but it could be better than D. I don't think he's had a low point on this season like D had at the Final 5 where she's nearly taken out. So we'll need to wait and see with Joe.
So we go back to camp, and now the Rebels need a backup plan because they were going after Joe. That doesn't really matter because the Rebels fall apart. The concept doesn't last very long because Mitch is in the hammock. Star comes up to him to talk new target. And Mitch just decides to say, you should play your shot in the dark tonight. Why? Can you give me any reason why this was a good thing for him to say?
In Mitch's mind, he's probably thinking that he can earn some brownie points with Star if he was the person that was honest to her when she went out the door. But outside that, I really don't see a lot of strategic benefit. He's essentially telling the Revolution Alliance that this revolution ain't happening. So now the big conversation is, do we want to vote out Mary or do we want to vote out Star? We're going to cut one of these bottom feeders. We get some insights from a couple different contestants. Joe, for some reason, wants to take out Mary. He thinks that Mary is the bigger challenge threat, so Joe's very focused on the physical side of the game.
Yes.
Shaheen wants to keep Mary. He feels like him and Mary have connected to some degree. She could be a valuable number for him. We ultimately see Star go home over Mary. So who do you think is the one that's really campaigning for Mary's safety, or is this just a group decision in your mind?
I think it's a group decision. I think it comes down to Star was an earlier target for the whole group. We see pretty early on in this episode the core four talking at the reward. They talk, hey, we're going to go Star. Star was a more straightforward boot. Maybe Shaheen is thinking quietly, if I need someone to work with against Joe, I want Mary, not Star, preserving that door.
That's a really good point because Star passed Eva in Idol. There's evidence of Star being more likely to work with that pair of Joe and Eva than Shaheen and Kyle.
So that's my best theory because, I mean, honestly, there's not even much to talk about like at Tribal here. There's a couple things, but
well, there's one thing before Tribal that we need to shout out.
Oh, the rap break?
Yeah, of course, the music video.
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen anything like this on Survivor. This was fun. I'm happy that production is taking some liberty with the edit. I think when you have a season that's so stagnant strategically, you need to kind of make it entertaining in other ways. And they checked the box off here.
This felt like, what was your guy's name from last season? Toby?
Toby?
The guy who got all the edits that were like, the editors had a lot of fun with him. He had long hair. Andy!
You forgot about Andy?
No.
Toby?
I remembered him perfectly.
I'm so offended. The first overall draft pick in our fantasy draft, King Andy.
Was he really?
Yeah, I took him.
These things just don't stick in my brain. It did feel kind of like that. It was fun. To be honest, it took her so long to get into the rapping, and she was doing like the for a while that I was like, is she actually going to rap or is she going to call the uh-huhs good? But it was pretty cool. It was fun.
Yeah, I wrote down my favorite line. I was in a bar watching this episode last night. So nice. When the rap part went on, the entire bar was having a fun time with it. But my favorite line in the original song was, quote, Camilla, on the other hand, she wants to make some plans, but now nothing. Silence. So some random shots thrown at Camilla in this song, but I think that could be foreshadowing Camilla's reputation should she sit in the final tribal council. I feel like if Camilla makes it to the end, people will see her as the follower of Kyle from this alliance. So,
which, Jeff says this in Tribal, actually. It's good to remember that we, the audience, have more information than the people on the show. Camilla is going to be perceived on the season by the contestants as just kind of there. And she's played a great game. And so if she does end up not going very far, not winning or whatever, she deserves a lot of credit. I like her play a lot. It has just been a little too subtle.
So going to Tribal.
David looks pissed.
David is mad. He is staring down the entire cast, showing off his jawline in the process. He's wearing the same fit that he wore for his casting photo, that black tank top.
Do you think he knows at this point that he's single?
Not yet, but he's probably suspecting it.
Yeah, that was pretty brutal when that friend of the show, Tony, sent out that article that David's whole reason for being there, to make enough money to buy his girlfriend a house and a ring, has left him. But I'm sure David has gotten plenty of DMs.
Oh yeah, he'll be okay.
He's doing fine.
I will say, out of everybody on the jury, I'm the most excited to hear David's comments in the final tribal.
Yes.
I think he'll be the most harsh, especially compared to like Chrissy or Cedric.
Cedric's going to be like, why am I here? I forgot because I'm the most inconsistent player to ever make it to the show.
Well, I kind of agree with that. I don't know if we even need Cedric on the jury. No shade at Cedric, but at the same time, like, he got 11th place. I would rather have a smaller jury with people who are more connected to the remaining contestants. I have no clue where Cedric will vote in a final tribal right now, but I have a sense of where Chrissy and David may go.
Cedric's recklessness is interesting, though.
Only other highlight for me from this tribal was a quote from Star. She says that Mitch told her to play her shot in the dark, and quote, respectfully to Mitch, he didn't stutter, which is a great line from Star.
I missed that. What? Damn.
This was Star's episode. She had so many great one-liners on top of the song. It made me wish that we saw a lot more from her earlier in the season.
Yeah. I had a couple things here. Eva talks about this vote as part of a straightforward process. Like, next one, we're going to keep on rolling, right? Very, very confident line from Eva that I don't think will help her in the long run. It's true, but the jury doesn't need to hear it. Not a great look, but not the end of the world. The other question here, and I just wanted to get your take on this. There's a big discussion on should you be playing Survivor from a place of trust or a place of paranoia? Should you base your game off of assuming your alliances are solid, or should you always be looking over your shoulder? How do you feel about that? How do you think you would play?
Well, if I ever went on the show, I would want to have a more dynamic approach to the game. I wouldn't want to just sit in one alliance the entire time and just hope that I can beat them in a jury vote in the end. Based on me as an individual, I feel like I'm someone that would not have a S tier level social game to the point where I could just defeat anybody in my alliance. I would want to feel like I outplayed them strategically so I have things to point to on my resume in the end. So I think I would lean a little bit more towards like the paranoia side, being willing to flip on people. But as with all things, you can take either of those to an extreme. You don't want to be so paranoid like David to the point where no one trusts you, but you also don't want to be so loyal to the point where you're just blinded by your allies and you're not paying attention to what's going on. So I think I'd lean more towards the paranoia side, but what do you think?
I would try and play from trust. I think I would go insane if I was playing from paranoia.
Well, when we played those seasons in college, were you more loyal or more flip-floppy, would you say?
That's a good point. I was extremely loyal. I've never seen my elimination coming. The last time we played, I was voted out first because it was my first game after I won, and I did have some idea that I was a target, but thought my numbers were better. And then I don't remember who flipped on me. It doesn't matter. I always play from trust because I don't want to play from paranoia, which is not a great way to do it. But I don't know. I feel like personally, I will keep a more level head if I play straightforward, but it will not benefit me in the long run of the game.
Want to get to the vote?
Yeah, let's do it.
So it's a 5-3, 5 on Star, 3 on Mary. This ended up being a split vote, so I'm getting the sense that everybody was in on it. The fact that they split it here means that the Revolution Alliance could have actually made something happen if they all decided to work together, but that was not the case. So Star is taken out of the game. Quick epitaph for Star. RIP Star, our 5-star SoundCloud rapper. I really enjoyed Star on this season. I wish we got to see more of her. She didn't really come forward in the edit until the post-merge, but at that point, she had some great one-liners in Tribal Council. She didn't play a large enough role in the season's strategy, and because of that, it wasn't worth it for the editors to give her a lot of time. But I would be interested in seeing Star return on the show. I don't know if it's very likely just with how few returning player seasons we're going to have moving forward. So
here's what I'll say for Star. Because Star was on my team, Star underperformed. Star has me in 4th somehow. Explain to me how I have Camilla and Tony and Olivia have Mary and they are above me. I don't understand it. They had David, but...
Is Camilla the only person you have left right now?
Yes.
Okay.
Camilla's all I've got left. I picked Star coming into this season because I thought Star was going to be a very charismatic, very dynamic player. Former professional athlete, or at least high-level collegiate athlete, former basketball player. She's a salesperson. She's got charisma. She has, when she wants to, all of this energy. We see it in the rap break, right? We see it in this tribal. Those are the reasons I drafted her. That just didn't materialize at any point where it really mattered on the season. And that's a bummer. Like you said, it would be great to have her back. It's unlikely, but it just feels like she never found her footing. And sometimes you have that, right? You have a player who's really good on paper and just never finds their way.
So it's been rumored recently that there will be a woman from 48 returning on 50.
Okay.
Is Star your top pick for that spot, or who would you want?
No, it's Eva. I love Eva.
Okay, mine is Say. I'm logging that in now.
Yeah, Say would be good on a returning player season. Yeah.
But if there were more spots, I would be down for Star. Want to go to winners and losers?
Yeah, who's your loser?
Loser this week, pretty obvious. It's going to Mitch. This pains me because Mitch is the only person left on my fantasy team, but I will say that his chances of being the 0 vote finalist continue to go up on this season. He might have a bit of a more difficult path to the end, but I think when you have a season like this, where there is one alliance running the show, the jury likes to blame someone on the periphery of that alliance. They need a scapegoat. They need someone who they can say, you ruined the game for us because you should have known that you should have flipped and you didn't. And that's happened in the past. People who watch Survivor Ghost Island, Laurel fell into that role. And I think we could be seeing something similar from Mitch, where even if he finds his way into the core and he makes it to the end, he will get criticized for not flipping on that group in this round. So I think that Mitch's chances of winning the season are basically shot right now. And I'm just hoping he can make it to the end and get me as many points as possible.
See, this is very interesting because I have Mary as my loser. Mitch has paths forward. I agree that he's going to end up a no-vote finalist at peak. He's in a pretty comfortable spot right now. I did not expect you to go Mitch. I was really certain we'd both go Mary.
I had a difficult time giving it to Mary because she was already on the bottom going into this week, and she did the most she could with the cards that she was dealt. She was in a spot where it was either going to be her or Star, and she was at least able to survive this round and make it one more day. So she's not in a great position long term, but it was probably the best possible outcome for her given the options on the table.
Yeah, fair enough.
Who's your winner this week?
My winner's Eva. She's in the core 4, and she's not anybody's first target. Kyle, Joe, Shaheen could very well end up in a standoff, pointing their guns at each other. Those 3, pew pew. Eva is in the core 4. None of them are gunning for her. None of them see her as a threat that blocks their path to the end. The people on the outside of the core 4 are going after the 3 in the standoff. So I like Eva's chance of just making it to the end that way. Does she have the best winning speech? No. But if she sits next to Joe and Joe gives a whole spiel about loyalty and honor and bitter people tear him to shreds, Eva could be left standing in the end and win out because of that.
Well, do you think Eva won't make the same mistake? I feel like Eva's going to go to the end and also preach honor and integrity, just like Joe.
Yeah, but I think it's a tone thing, right? I think there's enough people where Joe has said something to them or they have perceived something from Joe that could burn a bridge where Eva is just kind of there and everyone likes her, right? I don't see Star voting for Joe, but I see Star voting for Eva.
Yeah, I'd probably lean more Eva than Joe for Star. And I do think that's a really good point. By operating as Joe's second in command for a lot of this season, she might have slightly less agency in their moves, but she also gets way less backlash should they go to the final tribal together. And side note with Eva, she has this public alliance with Joe. She has 2 public advantages in her immunity idol and her safety without power. And despite all of that, there are so many signs pointing towards Eva. Her name has not been written down once in a tribal council. I don't think Joe's name has been written down either. So you need to give them credit. Joe, it's a little bit different because Joe won 3 immunities. So there haven't been that many opportunities to even take a shot at him. So I feel like Eva's social game has been a little bit better between the 2 of them. My winner this week is Shaheen. I feel like Shaheen is presented as a crucial strategic player in this Star vote. He connects with Mary and he campaigns for her safety. And looking down the line, if Mary doesn't go out at final 7, as many of us probably expect, then Shaheen could use her as a valuable number for some kind of move. So
yeah,
I don't think anyone's game was drastically benefited or damaged by the Star boot, but the person who probably benefited the most was Shaheen.
Yeah.
I got a quick dishonorable mention, and this is a predictive one.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Well, not a lot happened this episode. I'm trying my best, right?
Yeah, fair enough.
I'm giving the dishonorable mention to the future applications of Eva's safety without power. Do you understand the logistics of that advantage? I know that came into play last week.
Break it down anyway.
So this advantage expires at the final 7. Next episode is the last time that Eva can use it. And what it does is that it allows Eva to leave the tribal council. So she is safe from the vote. No one can write her name down, but she can also not cast a vote herself.
Right.
I know it feels like all hope is lost and this one alliance is going to steamroll the game. If Eva uses her safety without power next week it's not a 7-person tribal council, it's a 6-person tribal council. In that scenario, then those bottom feeders, Camilla, Mitch, and Mary, do have another chance to flip the game in their favor if Kyle is willing to finally join them in that move. So
Right.
the only way I see the people outside the majority taking back control would be through the misplay of Eva. And since there isn't a lot to talk about this episode, I'll give my dishonorable to a prediction for next week.
Okay. Wait, are you saying you don't want to see that happen? Because that could be some pretty compelling TV.
It would be compelling TV. It'd be a dishonorable for Eva.
Okay, got it. I don't think she's going to play it, but we'll see. That would actually be pretty interesting, so I'm kind of hoping for that now. My honorable mention goes to echolocation, because there was an animal shot about bats. And a couple things about echolocation. Typically, the echo back is 100 times quieter than the sound made. So ears have to be very, very sensitive. So that's interesting. The reason I'm coming around to this is the serendipity of a couple things. There were bats in this episode, and I read a thing about bats this week.
Oh, like before you watch the episode?
Yes.
Okay.
Which I want to talk about the rainforest vine Markgravia evenia. Markgravia evenia. Markgravia is the family Evenia, the species, or the genus and species, I mean. It's a flowering vine endemic to Cuba. There's one in Cuba, and there's a similar plant in Guatemala, I think, and northern South America. But Evenia, this vine, has leaves that are designed to perfectly curve to reflect the echolocation of bats, specifically the Monophilus bat, which is a nectar-feeding bat. Basically, this vine has developed a neon sign for bats to draw them in so that the bats will feed and collect pollen and pollinate the vine.
Oh, okay.
And essentially go around and spread the vine's genetic material. And it's a crazy bit of like plant evolution where this plant somehow has developed this perfect scoop that amplifies the echolocated sound, right? 100 times quieter. Some echolocation systems, it's a much larger factor quieter, 10,000 times quieter. But when those sonic pulses hit these leaves, they are amplified back. So it's like a floodlight in the darkness, basically, for the bat. It's not at all really related to the show, but once I saw there were bats in the episode, I was like, this is a cool fact I can share.
Yeah, that's all you need. And it is interesting that we're getting the bat animal shots this season. I feel like 47, the theme was
the bat
bats.
Logo.
Yeah, it had the bat logo. There was bats in the opening theme song.
We've definitely seen more bats now.
Yeah, there's been some delays.
That's all I got. Hopefully, honestly, I'm hoping for your dishonorable to come true. Let's hope we get something interesting next week.
Yeah, I think it would definitely do a lot for the season. I'm not trying to jump the gun on this, but I feel like this might be the worst New Era season that we've covered so far. They can still change my mind in the back half, but
that'll be an interesting conversation at the end of the season, for sure. Because I think the cast is one of the best, but the outcome is one of the least interesting so far. Hopefully, fingers crossed. Thank you for bearing with us, but we'll see what happens next time.